Nick, there's three places that I find tranquility and peace. Well, besides in prayer with the Lord, but there's three places. One, the golf course.
Yes.
Especially on hole 4 and 5, because after that, all hell breaks loose with me. 2, on a mountain with snow. Love skiing.
Yes.
And 3, on a boat in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the ocean. You know, those three places, I mean, I find the most peace, the most tranquility. My heart rate drops, my blood pressure drops. And I always thought of myself, wow, well, on the golf course, I wish I could be a golfer, right? That would be great. That'd be terrific.
It would be.
Right?
Very skilled sport.
Yeah, no shit. The ball doesn't move and I can't even hit it. But yet I can hit it. I used to be able to hit an 85, 86 mile per hour fastball. Then we have the slopes, the ski slopes. Mm-hmm. I wish I can be an Olympic, skier.
Have you skied before?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Remember, I went to school in North Carolina.
Yes.
And so on the weekends, we would go skiing in the winter, and in Beach Mountain, Grandfather Mountain, all that area. So I learned how to ski when I was very, very young, and I kept on skiing.
Right.
But on the boat, I always say to myself, well, maybe a professional fisherman, a diver. I don't know, maybe go look for treasure. Right. Never has it occurred to me to be a powerboat race driver, professional, or whatever. And I know about the sport living in South Florida, but I don't know about it.
Right. I think I never thought about doing it either, but I walk by the water all the time.
I know that.
And I see they have speedboats going, and it's kind of tricky because it's like, man, I want to do, it's kind of like I want to jump out of a plane, but I'm never going to do it.
Right.
It's kind of like I want to drive in that fast boat, but to me on the water, it's hard. It's easy to lose control. Like you don't really have control of something floating on the water. You know what I mean?
See, I haven't even gotten that far because I haven't seen.
I've seen videos, and those guys, I don't know how fast they have to be going at least 100 miles an hour.
I would say 100 plus. Yeah.
Have you ever seen them when it picks air and the boats are like completely lifted off the ground?
Yeah, I have because I've seen also videos and old clips or old film of those powerboats. And I remember when I was younger, my dad took me once or twice to Marine Stadium when Marine Stadium was Marine Stadium and not the graffiti artwork that it has become now in Key Biscayne. And I remember seeing them, but I was young, and I've really never met out of all the athletes that I've dealt with in my life, in my past, of course, I've never dealt with a powerboat racer.
I've never met one.
Right. And I've never really met one until recently. Our next guest, or our guest for today, I should say, is known as the Prince of Offshore, Mr. Peter Hidalgo. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction.
You like that one, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, I have a million questions. No, not a million, but I have like a few interesting questions. I have a lot of questions about powerboat racing in general.
Oh, yeah, me too.
You too?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So who goes first? You or me? I'll go first.
Go ahead.
All right.
I'll go.
Great. I have this one question I have to ask. Because before you came on the show, I was looking at all your accolades and going through all this information that you shared with us. And I don't understand the three people on a boat, because I know race car driving, and in race cars, there's one person shifting or throttling, right? Or throttling with their feet and driving at the same time and shifting at the same time, right?
Right.
Okay. So my question to you is why three people on a powerboat?
Well, think of it as a team that has to be all in sync and really running the boat with three different minds. And each person has a particular duty in that race boat. For instance, you said driver. You have somebody that drives a car, is going to both drive, is going to be able to accelerate and shift. Well, think about it, how that's all split into three different individuals. And that's what it was back in the day. It used to be that you had the navigator, the throttleman, and the driver. Well, obviously, we know what the driver does. The driver is going to be steering the boat and is going to be looking to whatever the navigator, who is the third person, usually on the left or on the right, that's going to be indicating. And it's going to be able to point out to wherever each of the different points of the course that, would be what they call check boats, that the course is marked. Usually back in the day, the courses were for each lap 25, 30 miles. So it took a lot of navigating skill. So that's why you had to have the navigator. I leave the throttleman behind because the throttleman was the person, or is the person, that is responsible for the attitude of the boat and is going to run, like what you were saying, that you were amazed with how these boats jump from wave to wave and how they go up. Well, he's the one that's really responsible for keeping the attitude of the boat and the speed of the boat as they hit the waves. You don't want to be where you hit the wave and you're going straight up, like you're saying, because that loses time and it could really hurt you. In other words, you catch a wave and the next wave, you're trying to stay on top of it, because if you fall short of it and you trip, you go straight down to the next wave, and now you stuff, what they call stuff. That's why you see sometimes that the boats have all this real big splash and they go underneath like a submarine. That usually gets a lot of people hurt.
Got it. And let me ask you something, Pete. And why do they call you the Prince of Offshore?
Oh,
how many? Can you tell us how many championships you've won, and where you won them, and just tell us a little bit about that, and how you got your nickname? Because if there's a prince, is there a princess? Wherever there's a prince, there's a princess. And if there is a prince, is there a king? Okay,
well,
go ahead.
How it all began was, obviously, I started early on, and I was very youthful, looking in the sense that, look young, and I was up and coming. So I was really making a name for myself.
When did you start? What age?
When I was about 20, 21 years old. I raced for somebody else that, his throttleman became ill. And I was basically there, like they say, the right time, right place to get that break. And the person went ahead and told me, he says, "Hey, you want to throttle?" I looked at him, I said, "Sure." And that was my break. I went out there and performed, really well. And, we were in third place, I believe, at the time, before we had an engine problem that we blew the drive. And, we fell back. But it made such an impact that, I put notice that here I am.
And you were his guy.
And basically after that, I started throttling and then, started where I decided that, well, I'm going to do this for myself, and I got a boat, bought a used boat, started building it. And I basically re-rigged it and made it race ready, because there's the pounding that you took back then was considerable. So you had to have the type of rigging that you would find on an airplane or something that would have major impact, major vibrations. So we did that, and we redid the engines so the engines would have more horsepower. And we just, started making a name for, in this case, a name for myself with our team. And that boat was called Miami's Best. It was a signature 28-foot. And we were running against much larger boats and beating them. So
how big are the boats normally?
It depends on the class. It was because I was doing it in a local level. So they had like this, what they call the Sportsman Series. And they would allow for local racers that, that raced on weekends against one another, finally be organized and say, okay, you want to find out who's the fastest, come over here. We're going to run 100 miles or 70 miles, or whatever it is, because different classes ran more miles than others.
Right.
And our first two races, we won. And then
I'm surprised that you said it was 30-mile distance, the race?
Each lap. Each lap was 30 miles. So if you have 5 laps, that's 150 miles.
I would have never guessed it was that far.
That's
Yeah.
that's fine.
Now the races and the races they run now, they're 5 miles a lap. So while we have one leg that was 5 to 7 miles, they do a whole lap. Because the reason they did that is because they want more exposure. They want more spectators to see this phenomenon, like you said, of watching these boats jump up and down, race one another. So by making the courses shorter, they now have more racing. You know, you get to see them because they're more bunched together. See, back in the day, as you were, let's say, the better boat or whatever, you start stretching and making a distance between the next person or whatever. Now they're so short that the distances that you make might be maybe 3 or 4 boat lengths.
It makes it more exciting.
It makes it more exciting for the spectator.
Right.
For the old guys, you know, meaning the true and blue, like you have baseball, that you have, you know, the traditions. Well, the traditions of offshore, you know, there's that controversy of, okay, old versus new.
Right.
Oh, you would never touch me if we were running real offshore, because the old offshore guys call the new guys bayshore,
right,
because they're running around the bay or close to shore. So it's sort of like a little.
It's like the MJ. It's like the MJ LeBron controversy.
Right.
Exactly.
What's the speed that you guys maintain, like consistently? I know you probably go up and down.
Yeah, the boats now, for instance, I have a good friend of mine, Steve Curtis, you know, and, you know, I get to talk with him a lot. And he, you know, is running upward into the 150s, 160 miles an hour.
Whoa.
And when you have that kind of speed, you're running at an average of maybe 125, 130 miles more.
With that being said, and you know the risk of the waves and the boat bouncing and it could go down or up, flip.
Right.
Is there any fear factor?
Oh, that's the part of the adrenaline.
Right.
There's like you started to say when you guys were talking about the golf, going back to that, the golf, the skiing, and when you ski, you're jumping over slopes, you know, and you're jumping over little berms, you know, and you're sort of you know, getting the feel of everything, and you're in control. Well, and offshore, you're not only racing against a fellow racer, you're racing against the elements,
right,
meaning you're racing against what's in front of you, which is the ocean, the waves, and each wave have a wave pattern. You become that, you start catching that, and you start seeing, and you're able to identify it. There's always, after let's say 5 or 7 waves, there's this one wave that is really there to really make you sort of like letting you know, hey, you can't beat me, because you'll never guess me, and you'll never figure out how you do it. You try to do it by being prepared for that one wave.
See, I know all about the elements now.
Right.
Because I went skiing.
Right.
And I thought it was me versus me.
Right.
Until I made the wrong turn and I went straight down a mountain, and I probably rolled.
We talked about that, right?
Yeah. I probably crashed 400 yards.
Wow.
My gloves, boots, everything was
right.
flew off.
I remember.
I know the feeling.
I realized I don't have control over this sport.
Right.
My surroundings is a big part, which,
yeah,
you know, I've seen videos on the boats, and I always see them like, it looks like it's really hard to control.
Right.
Like when I drove a regular boat, and me just going 30 miles per hour hitting a wave, it's kind of like, it's scary.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know how you guys do that.
There's an intricacy of what I just said right now with the waves, because you're following the waves. But the guys now, how they run, and of course I haven't run with that new setup the way they run now, because it's a lot of turns. So now how you set up your boats are now more set up for going fast and coming out of a curve, because there's so many of them that as you come in and go out, you have to be ahead of whoever, you know, you're coming in or you're trying to catch up to. If there's a little bit of rough, then whoever has that talent to be able to run hard, because that's the thing that, you know, when you have that 1 to 2, 3 foot chop, most of everybody that's racing, they have that capability. So when it starts going higher at a higher speed, now it takes more talent, because now you have to, what we call as throttlemen, play the piano. The piano means that you're playing with the trim tabs, which are the tabs that control the attitude of the boat. So as you go down, the bow of the boat stays sort of level, or that you take a wave, it won't put you straight up, like you
Right.
said. And then you have the drives, or in this case, if you have outboards, you have the outboards that trim out. That's what gets you the speed. So once you find that balance between both and you're able to run over that stuff, then you're really flying.
So the water conditions won't cancel a race, will it? Because it's not like they could go out there and pave the ocean. So you could have a set date, go out there, and you don't
Back
know
in
what
the
water's
day,
gonna be.
the guys would look forward to that, because that would separate who was who.
Right.
You know, who were the bad boys
Mhm.
that could run no matter what conditions. And then there are, of course, the guys that were praying for the flat water, that they were super fast. And then you really had to be on your P's and Q's, you know, to really make everything fly. But when you went into the rough water, it was like this extra thrill that you were not only going against the best of the best to say, I'm it,
Yeah.
I'm better than you, I'm whatever. And at the same time, that if you're able to win the race, beat everybody at the same time, you're able to say that you conquered the water, then you could say, hey, I did this.
Right.
And that's what some of the guys would look forward to. That now it's very difficult. When you go down to Key West, because of the reputation it's always had, you're always going to find some kind of rough water, especially in November.
Wow.
So it's
So Pete, you started locally.
right.
You were racing for someone, then you went ahead and got your own boat, your own race team, Miami's Best. Love the name, by the way, 305, right?
Yeah.
Miami's Best. And so, when did you start going international? When did you win your world championship? And what came after that?
Well, we took on that name because it was bold, and a lot of people didn't like that. You know, it was sort of like in your face,
Mhm.
prove me wrong,
right.
and we sort of put a target on ourselves. Didn't know it at the time, but afterwards, I loved it, because once I won, I said, "Now catch me."
Right.
So, you know, even in the back, you know, I from the Clint Eastwood movies, you know, his famous line was, "Go ahead,
Right.
make my day."
Right.
So it was even more that, you know, that was in the back of the transom. So it was sort of like, you know, now everybody's trying to not only win the race, but try to smash us, so that
Right.
we would have to take that off, you know, but they weren't able to do it. And we did that locally, and how we came up with the name, because we were running against whoever was in the bay and whoever was going out in the ocean. If somebody said, "Come on," or sort of like, you know,
Yeah.
challenge us to say, "Hey, let's go race," and we started beating everybody. And just one day, it just came, you know, the name came about by saying, "Hey, I'm
So-
going Miami's Best."
Where
Right.
where do you guys practice? Because I live by the water. I don't ever see it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there has to be a spot where you guys practice. You just don't
Yeah.
show up and
Well,
race. And
The thing is how I started doing it is running inside the bay. Whoever was around, I would come right next to them, and if they went, I took off.
Yeah.
And that's how we raced inside. But then I started going out government cut. Usually government cut is pretty nasty. Nastier was all over.
oh yeah, it's
So you know, whenever we were going out, we went out government cut. Whenever we were coming back in, we went through all over. So we would get the boast of, you know, being able to go on that kind of water and come through it at a speed that, you know, said to me, "Okay, you know, you're getting better and better." But the practice, really, to answer you, the practice was going out in the ocean and learning mistakes. I spun out. I almost came out of the boat.
Yeah.
The guys who were with me weren't as lucky.
What I was gonna say, what kind of injuries do you find? Like, what like do
Your
people
knees
die from it actually?
From back. Oh, yes.
Really?
Yes. If you stuff, like what I explained earlier
Yeah.
in the show, if you stuff, you hit you trip and you fall in, the water that comes over the deck, it's tons of water, and that kind of, it's like hitting a brick wall. So most people break their necks or break their backs. You know, they've had some real bad accidents. That's why canopies came into place.
Mhm.
And, you know, we were one of the first to go full canopies. There were at the time when we raced in '87, only 3 of us.
Didn't you have an? I think I read that you had an accident.
Yeah, an accident
And
in New Orleans.
did you have
saved
the
my life?
canopy there?
I'm actually here.
Can you walk us through what happened with that?
Oh, that was something. We're running with a new boat.
Mhm.
It was a 32 skater that had been built especially for us, and we were running, and we were trying to get the bugs out of it. And like everything, when you get a new boat, there's different things that you're trying.
Right.
Everything is in a rush to put together because it's 2 of everything.
Right.
See, in a car, when you're running with a car, it's just the engine, the transmission, and then, the steering and so forth and so on. But in a boat, you have 2 of everything. So whatever you see in a car, it's duplicated. Car has wheels, has a transmission, whatever. The boat has the transmission, which in this case, it's called crash boxes. That's another story. Then you have the out drives, which, would be considered the drivetrain, the rear end of a car. And then you have the props, which would be considered the wheels in this case. So you have twice as much of a chance of something going wrong, that it'll break, or have something to slow you down, because once you got one engine, everybody's going by you.
Yeah.
So we were getting all that ready to run. We ran the first race. We finished 3rd, which is not bad, but as you're used to winning, you want to do better. So we went to a second race, and as we were learning the boat with the different things that we could do, we got another 3rd. And so now we're in New Orleans, and I have a chance now to try to get the lead, and it's rough. It's really, really bad. That day, at least 6 to 7 boats had accidents. 3 that were major. One of them was ours. It wasn't recorded because it could have been that bad, but the boat that did see it saw us when we flipped. And take you before that happened is we're running and we're trying to catch up to the leaders, and we go into the rough leg, and this time I'm close to them, and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to get you. And I start going and going and going, but unbeknown to me, I hit a buoy, and it's sort of like a crab buoy, and that buoy pulled the trim lines that I had completely. Just when we looked afterwards in the boat, they were just like torn. And when that happened, the fluid, the hydraulic fluid that pulls or pushes the ram for the drives to either go up or down, is now completely loose. So every time that I came off the boat, the drives would go up. Every time I came back in, the drives would push in. So what was happening in a catamaran, when you're running, you're running like this on the ocean. But when you have something that changes, in this case, that it was changing this, it was making me do this.
Right.
So it kept doing this, and it kept, changing me. The waves were coming in sort of from the port side. Yeah, they were coming from the port side. So it was just like a real, because it's Lake Pontchartrain. So the water was really a little bit different than what you would find in the ocean. And next thing you know, I had saved it a couple of times. And this one time, like I said to you at the beginning of the show, there's a pattern of waves.
Right.
Well, this one wave that wasn't supposed to be there came. And as I was coming over here, even though I had saved it a couple of times, came and just hit me and turned me, that I hit the next wave, turned me like this and turned me, and I went straight up. Now, mind you, the canopies were designed so that if you stuffed, like people were being killed or hurt really badly, because every time you stuffed, the water that would come from on top of the deck, would hurt. So, we did it designed for that, but not to be upside down.
Right.
In other words, to have the impact straight. So when I'm doing this and I'm seeing this, the first thing came to my head, I felt like a turtle. I put my head down and I'm bracing, because I'm saying this thing is going to shear this off.
Right.
And, that's it, whatever. Let me try to, put my neck in a way that, I don't know what I was thinking, but I know that I put
You got to get down.
my neck down.
Yeah.
I'm strapped down in five 5-point harness, so it's not letting me come. So I'm upside down, so I'm seeing all this. We landed flat, ran from what the witness is saying. I don't know, because to me everything was so fast
Right.
that you can't imagine. We ran upside down about 50 yards, and just like that, I mean, we bounced and whatever, but just like that, that wave that wasn't supposed to be there bounced us back again, blew a 5-foot hole in the side of the boat that we almost sank, and we were up. Mind you, the first thing that I came as a reaction was I hit the pumps. I hit the bilge pumps, because, I'm saying that, I'm seeing the boat starting to do this. So I knew that something was bad. I just didn't know how bad. And, we were able to, stay afloat. And then the rescue came over because everybody saw it. And then the one guy that, was a witness that was there taking pictures, had the camera, but when he saw that, he brought down the camera to look.
And didn't capture
that. But they have,
Right.
The eyewitnesses and all that saw it. So that was my episode.
Were you, and then did you retire? Did you retire shortly after that, or you kept on going, right?
After that, I was more determined, so much so that we hydraulic the motors, because when we stuffed, the water came into the motors. As you can imagine, the motors are on, water comes in. Hydraulic means when the water goes into the cylinders,
Right.
to the engine cylinders. So now you can't move the engine over to start and all that. So I'm being towed in, and I'm about, maybe from that point, about 12 miles from where I was supposed to go. But if you're going 5 miles an hour, you figure it out.
Yeah.
It's going to take me over an hour to get there. In that time that I'm doing the first half hour, I'm working on the engines. And, I was going to take the plugs out, but I remembered and I learned how to, make the engines basically push out the water with the valves by tapping, slightly but continuously the engine with the starters, so it would have the vibration to let the water out. Well, make a story short, I got, like, after 35 minutes, one engine started. So I went right. The guy that's with me, mind you, he was never going to be the same afterwards, and I couldn't use him afterwards,
Right.
because we ran one more race together as a unit, and he just couldn't get over it. Every time the boat did this,
A little PTSD there.
he
huh?
sort of started to say, careful,
So
slow down.
So Pete, let me ask you this question. You raced for how many years in total?
I started in 81 and ended in 91.
Okay, and today is it more organized, this league of this powerboat, offshore powerboat?
I'm going to say
racing? Is there a league? Is there an association?
Yeah, there's definitely a league. It's just that it's several associations
Right.
that are working. We used to be under APBA, American Powerboat Association. It's the oldest club that has been.
I'm sure it has
for
competition
powerboats.
now, right? Yeah.
And most of them, are sort of like an umbrella.
Mhm.
The APBA gives them an umbrella for them to run
Right.
their races. The oldest and that I was able to have both is UIM, which is.
And you won a championship on there, right?
Exactly.
I think you won a championship in every single organization that was out there.
We got our first right after I finished, running locally, where one guy, and I was about to say, came over to me and said, yeah, you're beating up on us, but you can't compete with those guys. So I looked at him and I said, you know what? You're right. I'm going to keep beating you guys. And if I really want to show that I'm the best, I'm going to have to go at the national
Right.
level. So the next year, which was 85, we went. And our very first year, we won both the national championship and the world championship.
Wow, that's amazing.
So just off the rip.
Yeah.
And along the way, we were making a name. We were getting the gremlins
Right.
off our boat, different things, and trying
Yeah.
different things and making it faster, slower, and slower.
Mhm.
So we came back again in 86. We finished second, second in Gold Coast, and we won again a world championship.
That's amazing. Does that sport have a big following Is he, or is it more international? I feel like that sport is more international. I'm going to ask you why. You know, the last now I remember where I would see an offshore boat all the time. Remember Miami Vice?
Yes.
You're too young.
I remember my face.
All right, the Miami Vice opening, right? It was the palm trees, the flamingo, and the boat.
I remember that.
And by the way, that was Pete inside the boat racing. I'm sure. Pete, what are you doing today? What are you doing?
Now,
what are you doing now after you retired? You put the boat to rest. Are you still involved in the sport?
Yeah. After we got our 3 world championships, we kept competitively. We kept placing. We got third, second, this, that, all the way up to 91 until we had the accident. Just took the time off and basically, just focus on whatever the future was going to bring. And that's what brings me to what I'm doing now. We're working on a 40-foot open fisherman that is going to be sort of in competition in that category with the Freemans, the Invincibles, the Prowlers.
And these are all what teams, racing teams?
No, these are actually open fish that are really to go out, fish and have a fun time. Take them to, let's say, a sandbar, or take them to a little island.
It's not offshore.
No, but
offshore.
But
racing fishing.
but what I did was, in redesigning the bottom, that competitiveness, that racing part of it,
right?
Is that I wanted to be the best out there. I wanted to be the best performing, not only in speed, but in the rough water capabilities. Yeah. And I believe that, when we do come out and finally take it out, that's what it's going to be. Yeah. Then we have the smaller models, the 30 and 32, which Ray Moreno, he's the principal that, I've been working with and working this, and he wants to go out racing. And I can't say that I'm committed just yet, but that blood seems to be.
Oh yeah, you have it boiling. In you, right? You have it in you,
and so we'll see what takes place in the future with that.
That's awesome. I know you're very competitive. I've known you now for a little bit over a year, right? And I knew that Pete wanted to get fit and everything, and so I gave him some tips, right? That and he went out and he actually did it, and he got fit. He lost weight, right? And feeling like a million, right, Pete? And so I know that you have that competitive drive in you, and I think everybody that we've had on the show that is a retired athlete has that competitive drive, and I know that that's gone over to your, it spilled over to your personal life. Right. But I want to thank you for coming on the show. Okay.
Thank you for more than anything for your tips. Yeah. And of course, your advice, because like you said, I went from a high percentage fat to a low percentage where, I'm hopefully getting below 15, which is, great. And, more than anything else, it gets me ready to be in shape that whatever the future is to come,
absolutely,
I'm fit for it. Because
I think you can get back on the inside that cockpit and ready to go. At least you look the part. I've seen pictures from before and now, and you definitely look the part. So I appreciate it, and I just want to say that I had a great time at the Marlins opener yesterday. They should have never pulled the pitcher. Okay, I'm okay with the shift. I'm not okay with the pitch count. Then that's the ugly truth.